so happy to be with you and to talk about how responsive fundraising moves beyond mission impact. So quick background. Well, I have a portfolio career. We're going to get to that in a second. I've been called a lot of things. That's one of them. But most recently, before I joined Gray Matter Group, I worked for a faith-based mission. So surprise, you're going to see some God references in this presentation. Don't kick me off the main stage. In fact, I gave this keynote a few weeks ago in Milwaukee. And so I'm really excited to share it with you today. Also to note, while I do really consider myself highly professional, I am anything but formal. I'm from the Midwest. I'm Midwest nice. So please know at the end of this, I will absolutely answer any questions you guys put in the Q&A section. Nothing is off limits with me. So I'm literally an open book. All right, so here we go. I mentioned this portfolio career. I was speaking with my coach and mentor because I am a big proponent that we all need one. And she said, you know, you have a portfolio career. And I had no idea what she meant by that. When I hear the word portfolio, I think of two things. I think of either money or art, like a body of work. And when I asked her for clarification, she said something along the lines of, I am diversified and I don't just do one thing. And I laugh because that's very true. I am an 8 on the Enneagram, if you guys know this, with a 7 wing. So the thought of me sitting still or not leading something or like missing out on a new adventure gives me heart palpitations. I mean, no thanks. So don't worry though, because this talk is not about right seat on the bus and org structure, although I could go on about that forever. The point of me sharing that is that for the first 25 years of my career, I was in corporate sales. And for those of you who are in that world-ish now, or perhaps have been there in a prior lifetime as well, you know it allows for the kind of schedule freedom that I mentioned. That's when I started to volunteer heavily in the nonprofit world. And that's when I coached my daughter's basketball team. And that's when I started my own leadership consulting business. That's when I started to have the flexibility to do other things in the world, to show up as sort of my full self. But at no one point in that process, real time, did I think or imagine that the second half of my life and career, it would sort of magically align and become a body of work. And, you know, I used to think differently about a lot of things in life that the older I get and as life experiences have taught me, we're just totally short-sighted and kind of way off base. Because cognitive knowledge is one thing. I think we can all attest to this. Cognitive knowledge is one thing, but experiential knowledge to me trumps degrees all day long. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am a lifelong learner and I know most of you are as well. And expertise matters, right? But education, right? We know this, it's extremely valuable and necessary, and R&D and progress and moving forward and improvement, all incredibly valuable things. As an example, I always have been just this voracious reader. I've been in a library since I've been about 6 years old. And we know that we can read a book, we can read an email marketing series, we can read an annual report, and yet not fully experience the mission. Being in a bidirectional organization donor relationship requires just that, a relationship. I mentioned I came from the nonprofit world. For those of you that don't know, I was at a ministry here, a homeless shelter, Meltrider Ministries in Grand Rapids, and I was the chief advancement officer for a while, and I was the interim CEO for a bit of time as well. So when I talk about donor relationships, to me, I was a relational salesperson, and relationships matter. That's where we're going to go today, because all of this matters so much. All of us in this virtual room and this time together hold some very important roles in the world, both personally and professionally. And we also have very important relationships in our lives. We have spouses, best friends, partners, siblings, parents, right? People who matter to us. Just like the employees within the organizations we serve, and just like the donors who keep our doors open. So my question for us is simply this: how are we showing up for them and for the world? Are we using our God-given talents and skill sets in tandem with our voices to lift others up and to lead them well, to communicate mission impact? And subsequently, where do we fit into all this? Because, I mean, we matter too, right? And so here's the first slide I would like to share with you. And this is one of my favorite all time. I mentioned I'm a reader, so I'm going to have them advance the slide for me, I think. There we go. Thank you. C.S. Lewis, one of my favorite guys of all time, who said, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less frequently. Legend attributes this quote to a variety of authors, including, most notably, C.S. Lewis, but probably more correctly, I think it was written by Rick Warren in A Purpose-Driven Life. But regardless, Lewis certainly affirmed this conception of humility. In Mere Christianity, he wrote this on the next slide. The real test of being, can you advance that slide for me? Because I'm reading and I want to read from the slide. Okay, here we go. Thank you. The real test of being in the presence of God is that you either forget about yourself altogether or you see yourself as a small, dirty object. One, I like it because I just have to reread it a couple times to go, what is he saying? Is he like talking badly about me? But again, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but as C.S. Lewis was saying, and as I think we all know, it's better, and I might add more fundraising savvy, to think of yourself less. The real test of being in the presence of your donors is putting your donors first. And I know right now you guys are probably all thinking, great, here we go again about servant leadership and donor relationships, like this whole old trope, right? Don't talk to me about this. We know, we get it. We live it every day. And I used to think that too, you guys. I did, especially in the first part of my career, before I tried to actually do it and experience it. And after my sales career, as I mentioned, I was on staff at Mel Trotter Ministries for about 3.5 years. And that experiential knowledge taught me way more than anything I could read and learn cognitively. I mean, I really kind of in hindsight thought, how hard can it be? I mean, stupidly, how hard can nonprofit be, right? I've been volunteering, I've been doing it, but we all know you get on the other side of that table and the experience is a whole nother ballgame. Again, I used to think a lot of things before I accumulated the experiential knowledge that life has taught me. But you know, the one thing that it turns out I was always right about, that I didn't necessarily have to experience real time, the one thing, perhaps the only thing in life that ultimately I ended up never being off base about, was who I am, was who I truly am. I've always known that, cognitively, spiritually, deep within me, even before I accumulated those life experiences that kind of took me off the track. And I think probably most of you can resonate with that as well. We've always known who we were created to be. And I bet, again, that you've known that, but your life experiences taught you that in order to fit in order to be a good leader, in order to matter, that at some point in your journey, you had to change. Now, I'm not talking about learning to have manners or chivalry or like to temper your temper. That all sort of falls under growth and transformation and under the heading of when you know better, do better. I am talking about changing who you were created to be in the first place, showing up as an imposter version of yourself, whether you're in leadership, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you are raising funds for your mission, showing up in some way that doesn't feel authentic to yourself. And I bet you've had to do that as you've gone along in life. And then you thought, who am I? What am I actually doing? What am I actually saying? And what I want to remind us of is, you know who else has had to go through those exact same life experiences? Your donors, the people who are actually funding our missions, that we are using responsive fundraising to talk to and to be in relationship with. So let's rewind the clock for a second. I, as in folks who are working these slides, are going to have a lot of slides coming up here. I want to rewind the clock for a second to all of our younger years. And I want to take a look at some actual prayers by kiddos that were documented by their parents and teachers. So the first one was from this little kiddo. His name is Joel, age 6. He says, God, can you put a sister in my mommy's tummy? I would like to blame everything on her. Okay, I like this kid. The second one, written by a girl who's 7 named Macy. Oh, no, this is Becky, actually. Dear God, help Macy, her friend Macy, to feel better. She ate a donut and she threw up a donut. The next one is from Adam, age 5. Dear God, thank you for the day and for mom and for dad, and oh, protect the bees. The next one, this kid is, he speaks like me, lots and lots of words. I enjoy this, okay? Because you see right now, it's going to be on 2 slides continued. God, help us have the greatest good night's sleep and bless everyone in the world. Also, can you please help me find the architecture? The architecture, he's 7. And it's continued. Thank you for all the wonderful trees and all the wonderful leaves and all the wonderful bushes and all the wonderful sticks and all the wonderful trucks and all the wonderful rocks. Whew. Amen, Michael. Okay, I love this kid. Last one, you guys. Here we go. Age 8, personal favorite as well. Hey, God, can you please put another holiday in between Christmas and Easter? Because there's nothing good in there now. So these kids were communicating from a place of authenticity, right? Clearly, they were not hiding their true feelings or their real selves. Some of these communications focused on others, like care and compassion for bees or friends who ate too many donuts, but mostly, as expected at that age, before they accumulated all these life experiences, their words were kind of focused on self-serving interests and concerns. And I think, just as these kids were trying to make sure that someone had their back, that someone, God in this case, was looking out for them and their interests and their concerns. I think that adults are also trying to make sure that that's the case, especially before donating their money to your organization and mission. What if I told you that in the US, an estimated 88% of the workforce, 130 million people, go home every day feeling disengaged, that they work for an organization that doesn't listen to or care about them? That is 7 out of 8 people. If you were a team right now of 8 people, 7 of them feel like you don't care. It's kind of sobering, isn't it, to kind of put those data points together? And I mean, those 88% of the people, those are our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, our sons, daughters that we're talking about, the people that matter to us. The people who matter to us, including our donors, are working for organizations that seemingly don't care for them as individuals, but instead only see them as mere functions or objects to the success of the organization, a means to the bottom line. People are feeling this in the workplace every day. So here's the question. Knowing that, understanding the parallel that the people we need to support our missions are earning their money inside organizations that make them feel depleted and disengaged, right? How does it change our messaging? How does that change our entire fundraising strategy? How does the way in which we treat our donors affect them as humans? Knowing that, thinking about that as we lead, as we are engaging with our donors, as we're communicating to our donors. Friends, you have a unique opportunity to utilize responsive fundraising in a way that moves beyond your mission impact. You truly have the opportunity to change people's lives. When people feel like no one has their back, when no one hears them or sees them for who they truly are, it kills them professionally and destroys them personally. And it wreaks havoc on culture, both organizational culture and our culture at large in the world. So the question then becomes, how can you use responsive fundraising and all that goes with it, marketing, communication, events, volunteerism, relationship, to better someone else's entire world, how they spend their days, how they see themselves, to change perhaps how lonely or inauthentic or unimportant they feel, to give first to your donors rather than take. Responsive fundraisers understand that donors come first. They know the right response is to be donor-centric, not bottom-line-centric. Because make no mistake, the 88% of the workforce who spend their days and weeks and years totally disengaged, they know firsthand when they don't come first. They're living it every day. They know when they're basically a cog in the bottom line wheel. It's not their first rodeo. They live it every day of their working lives. So if your messaging and your relationship and maybe even your staff is interacting from a place of you first, organization first, I'd like to suggest an immediate about face and actually go henceforth with a both and approach that looks like this next slide. A both and intentional direction to model donor first behavior as a leader in your space, and same time to help people be who they were created to be so they can do what they were put on this whole earth to do as part of a team or community, so they can show up and be who they were meant to be and feel a sense of belonging. Basically, we need to show people their human value before you talk about their monetary value. This is, I cannot overstate the importance of this. And I know as nonprofit leaders, as fundraisers, we know it cognitively, but are we experiencing it? Are we doing it? Because how in the world, you guys, do we expect donors to believe in our missions, to know who it is that we are serving as an organization and the impact that their donor dollars are making in those people's lives if they have not been properly and strategically told, right? Or perhaps even more importantly, if they've never been shown in our actions on a consistent basis. When we don't show people well, help them experience well, treat our relationships with them well, it has a profound downstream effect. And yes, I mean downstream all the way to an even more stressful year end. Saying words or handing donors something to read every so often, people can cognitively hear or read the words, but until they experience those words in action, then real, authentic, trusting relationships will not fully be formed. You won't really be doing responsive fundraising. So in other words, those relationships won't be sustained. Monthly sustainers is not just some random descriptor. Trusting relationships take time. We know this too. That's why it's called cultivation, right? Another non-random descriptor. Because we plant seeds constantly in our worlds through marketing and through grabbing email addresses and through sending subsequent email series. But if we aren't showing up to water the seeds, not only does the relationship not grow, it dies. It's dead. In fact, DOA is what I used to tell my team. Dead on arrival. Like before we even start to do all of this strategic work, it doesn't matter if we're not in relationship with people. So if you're going to check out and basically like call in the relationship, right? I mean, it never had a chance. If you go back to all the relationships that matter to you, as I mentioned earlier, your parents, your kids, your siblings, your friends, if all you're doing is emailing them without any relationship to undergird that foundation, then what happens? Yeah, strife, divorce, quiet holidays, right? You get the picture. We know this. To me, the biggest relational and fundraising blunder is when people are not shown. When people are not shown, they're not walking the walk, because talk is cheap, right? When organizations are not demonstrating in action their donors' fundraising impact and leading with integrity, then their doors will close. I know it sounds harsh to hear, but we've gone through that. We've seen it, right? So I'm talking actual servant leadership, empowering leadership, putting others first, paving the way for other people to shine, which has a tremendous upstream effect, right? To be who people were created to be in the world, that is when responsive fundraising moves beyond mission impact. Leadership is like parenting, and we're all leaders. It doesn't matter title. We are all absolutely leading in the world. And we all know that running nonprofits and fundraising is constant leadership. Thus, the parenting analogy is one that I use a lot when I'm doing like leadership development or coaching and fundraising and sales training. I mean, if we want to lead our kids as they're coming up, it does no good to say, as an example, don't drink. It's not good for you, right? You're not of legal age or whatever reason you give them, and then turn around and drink in front of them. Again, as an example, right? Hypothetically, because I'm not condemning or judging. I'm just telling you guys, I know from experience that doesn't work. When my daughter, who's now 27, I still like say my baby girl, which gets me into a lot of trouble. So my 27-year-old grown woman daughter was like 8 or 9 years old. She gently reminded me how I always told her that someday when you're old enough to drive, Olivia, someday you're going to be 16. And when you're old enough to drive and get your driver's license, if I ever catch you drinking and driving, right, or riding in a car with someone who's had even one drink, you're going to be grounded. You'll no longer have access to a car. Like you'll be locked up forever and ever. Amen. I'll throw away the keys. Like whatever. I was doing my Mother of the Year parenting threats to keep her safe. And I thought I was winning all kinds of Mother of the Year. Hey, Mother's Day is coming up soon, by the way. So I thought I was winning Mother's Day points proactively. She wasn't even double digits. And I'm telling her about the dangers of drinking and driving. I'm saying one thing, right? And then we have a death in the family, a family member who had lived a long and prosperous life, was a matriarch of her family, grandmother, almost 90 years old. So after the funeral, we all went out to eat, as you do, and it's been an exceptionally long and hot day. And I was a grown woman, by the way, in my 30s, also an actual adult of age. And I'm a runner, so I had like maybe one ice cold Mick Ultra, like it's mostly water anyway. And so we're talking about the family matriarch at lunch, and we're saying goodbye in the parking lot. We're telling our stories. We're embracing and hugging. And Olivia looks at me with a smirk on her face. She says, who's driving us home, Mama? And I'm like, I told her I was, of course. And we had to have a neighbor come pick us up a mile down the street. I mean, kids, right? People, they're always watching. It doesn't matter what age. They're watching. Do your words and your actions align? And we laugh about it to this day. But Olivia was right. She was absolutely right. I was about to show her with my actions that the words I said did not align. And you guys, we need to make sure that we don't engage with our donors and operate under the do as I say and not as I do edict. We need to make sure that we're valuing our donors' lives just as much as we purport and promise to value the lives of those individuals that our organizations are serving. It's a bi-directional, ongoing, all the time, transparent, honest relationship. So speaking of that, let me tell you quickly about Olivia. She's 27 years old. As I mentioned, about 3 months ago, she entered the workforce. She's off the Venmo payroll. Yes. And, I can no longer, as I mentioned, refer to her as my child, especially when she's in earshot, because again, I get an earful. And I'm super proud of her. This young woman, my daughter, finished her master's degree in psychology from the University of Michigan. My undergrad's from Ohio State, by the way. And she's now working at Henry Ford Health System in Detroit. And she and I have experienced quite a lot together. But there was a time 25 years ago, in fact, when I thought I wasn't going to be able to experience her grow up, to be in relationship with her at all. Some of you know this, and I'll condense the story, but when I married her dad right out of college at Ohio State. We met in Columbus and was married very young, had Olivia when I was 23. She's 27. Again, don't do the math. So I get married. Her dad moved us away, 7 hours away from family and friends. So I have a new baby, a new job. I'm accumulating this experiential knowledge I speak about. I don't know what I'm doing. I have a sales career. I don't know what I'm selling. I mean, I'm doing the best I can do. And he moved back to Ohio without us. And I found myself in the midst of a divorce, unexpected, not in my checklist. And it was in the middle of all that when I was diagnosed with leukemia. And they said, there's no cure for this. You're not going to make it. You're going to die. Also, I was a donor at the time. So I share this story with you on so many levels, but think about that, right? How are you impacting your donors' lives? You have no idea what they're going through. No idea. So there was a real time in my life when I didn't think I was going to be able to be in relationship with my daughter. I thought she wasn't going to know me. I thought she would have no idea how much I loved her. The day I checked myself into the hospital, I had a bone marrow transplant. I was in the hospital in Cleveland for 35 days. The day I checked myself in, walked through those doors, had no idea if I was ever going to walk out of those doors. I handed my parents a letter to give to Olivia. And in it, I basically parented her for the first 18 years of her life. This is what you do when you go to kindergarten. This is how you make your first friend. This is what you do when you go to middle school and girls are mean to you. This is what you do when you go to high school and boys are asking you out on dates. This is what you do about the prom and a church and a college and how to pick a spouse and a partner. This is how you do life. I hoped she would read the words and understand how much I loved her, understand how much I cared about her. This is the first picture of us when I got out of the hospital. This is me and Olivia 2 days after transplant. She was just 2 years old. She was about 18 months when I was diagnosed. 2 years old in this picture. The next picture is a picture of us today. I say today is about 3 years ago because she's on her own. You guys, we've had 27 years of experiencing each other in relationship. Today, I no longer have to hope that she understands how much she matters to me, how unconditionally I love her. I know with unwavering conviction, because we've been in a relationship, that she knows. She absolutely knows. She doesn't have to read it. Experiential knowledge is everything. How are we experiencing our donors today? How are we showing why we care and why the work we do and the impact that we make matters? Do our words and actions align, or do we have to call somebody and pick us up a mile down the road? I would like to encourage and suggest to you this morning. Well, it's morning for you. I would like to encourage and suggest you today, right now, that the call that you might need to make is to yourself, to your younger self, the person that you've always known, the person that you knew who you were created to be from the time you were a child. Here's one more documented prayer from a 6-year-old named Charlie who wrote this. He prayed this: "Dear God, why are you up there and I'm down here in my bedroom? Can you come down sometime and visit me?" Right? No matter the age, we all want relationship from the time we were born. We want connection. We want purpose. We want to share space with people and to know that we matter. So when we go to our donors with requests, I want to encourage us to do it not from a place of expectation or a checklist or what you read on websites. Here's how you put together an email series, but rather from a place of authenticity. Share stories like I just shared with you, the real you, right? Share those vulnerable stories in your communication with your donors and bring them, invite them into relationship with you, this responsive fundraising, this responsive bidirectional relationship that quite possibly is different from any of the other relationships they have in their lives. We have no idea what people are going through. Make them first. Make them matter. I used to think if I sounded a certain way, that would automatically make me the right kind of leader. Or if I sounded and messaged in a certain way, that it would make us magically hit budget. Have you ever thought about that just from sort of a professional way, that in order to not alienate certain donors of a certain wealth rating score, that you had to sound a certain way? Or personally, that if I sound like a boss, then that automatically will make me a boss. That sort of fake it till you make it mindset. If I sound like I know what I'm doing, then people will believe me. They won't know I'm really faking it. You guys, everyone knows. Okay, everyone knows. Your family members, your coworkers, and definitely your donors. It comes through. People are always watching. Because you see, we can't hide from who we truly are. We can't hide from the impact that we care to make. We have to do it from a place of authenticity. And I think that for many of us, being an adult today is hard. We hear it all the time that it's hard to grow up, right? With all the technology and social media and pressures that some of us who are of a certain fifth decade of life, right? We didn't have that growing up. But I also think it's hard today being an adult at work. I do. It's like kind of being like a kid at school without art or gym or recess. It's like no fun. It's too serious. There's not enough play, which was and is sort of inherently a part of who we are. But I do think it's a big part of why so many of us and our donors are part of that statistic, that disengaged at work statistic. Gallup data confirms it. And thankfully, for many of us, they also confirm that collectively, adults' perspectives have shifted from what we do for a living, by title. I'm a CEO, I'm a pick a title. But it's shifted from what we do for a living to how we want to live, how we want our days to be filled, how we want to be in relationship with people. Research from MIT, in fact, finds that our health and happiness at work is no longer an afterthought. It's rather a driving force in our decision to take, to stay at, or to leave a job. So I wonder what our driving force is in our decision not to quiet quit our donors and instead loudly declare that they are the reason that we exist, right? This bi-directional relationship. If what we do for a living has now shifted to how we want to live, then yes, let's live. Let's live authentically. Let's be responsive, and let's make a difference in the lives of everyone that goes beyond mission impact. It is a blessing and a gift to be able to do so. Last thing before we open up for questions, I want to talk about this, is that the current state of the workforce unhappiness is a big problem to solve, right? We've got enough problems that we're all trying to solve, but like that workforce sort of non-belonging, unbelonging, we have to kind of tackle that too. And again, we have an opportunity to do so with our jobs right now, with responsive fundraising. But to get there, we need to start walking towards each other with small incremental steps, all while showing up exactly who we were created to be. So the first step in this is to reimagine flexibility. To me, intentionality and flexibility need to go hand in hand. Flexibility is now, and has been since 2020, part of the post-pandemic zeitgeist, right? In 2023, when the big auto manufacturers in Michigan, when they went on strike, a 4-day work week was like a top demand. And your donors are experiencing this shift too. So could it be that a reimagined way to be responsive in our messaging could lead to more relational intentionality with our donors? It's something to think about. I really want you to think about intentionality and flexibility. How do you show up in people's lives in a way that lets them know that you care? Not just are saying right here, right? Bi-directional. The second step in this is we need to rebuild belonging. This is huge. So many of us are serving or have served organizations that are working to help the marginalized people in the world. And for us, with support systems, we feel sometimes like we don't belong. Imagine what people in the world who truly have no one feel like. And so to build belonging, we have to go slower. Okay, if I'm saying that, it's true. I never slow down. But to build belonging, we have to go slower. We must be intentional about what makes someone feel loved and appreciated, and conversely, what doesn't, right? What doesn't, what makes them feel alienated, even if it's not intentional on our part. We have to look out for patterns by paying closer attention to what our donors want and asking them directly, like, do you feel connected to our organization, right? And we're open to feedback. We're here for you. So how can we increase a sense of belonging to you, for you, and others? Remember, we can hear and read their answers, but showing them and being in relationship with them will provide experiential opportunities to change their lives. It is bi-directional. And lastly, we need to restore purpose. We need purpose, always, each of us, to keep us motivated, to get us out of bed in the morning. And disengagement has been consistently linked to a lack of meaning at work. So how are you using responsive fundraising to increase meaning and purpose as much as revenue? How are you using responsive fundraising to increase meaning as much as revenue? How are you using it to increase relationship as much as quick conversations? That's true leadership, you guys. That is empowering leadership. That is paving the way for others to shine and be who they were created to be. Organizational psychologist. This is a nod to my daughter, my kid. She's still my kid, who's going to be an organizational psychologist someday. They have been well documented saying we need to focus on things that are both timeless and urgent. The need for human connection, the need to matter, and the need to learn are what transcend times and crises. So you see, if you start from a place of other-centric, of donor-first-centric, and think about who they truly are, you will inherently be responsive. That is what I have for you today. They told me 40 minutes. I am also a woman of a lot of words all the time, so I'm going to open this up and start to see some questions and see how I can best answer them. How would this approach work for a science-focused medical association? I appreciate that many fundraisers come from a ministry setting. Yep. But these overt religious principles are not going to fly with my donors. Got it. Yep. Okay. I think it goes on a little bit. So again, for me, you know, that's the place that I come from. That's the place from which I operate. But I hear you, right? It is not meant to alienate, because what we also need to do is be inclusive. Again, walk this walk of doing what we say we're going to do. So if I'm sitting here telling you to be inclusive and be bidirectional, I'm not meaning to alienate your crowd of people. So what I would say is to ask those questions, to be curious, to be in relationship. And really, humans are humans. So at the bare bones, at our foundational human level, we all have this need to belong and to matter. And so I would say to reach out relationally and just find that area and that commonality of trust. Share openly. This is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is what we're doing. This is the impact we hope to make. Talk to me about you. Why are you here? Right? So it's just that sort of relational principle that I think transcends and supersedes what you're talking about, religious principles. Oh, what is the MIT quote again, please? Here you go. It is, let me find it. I have it written down. Oh, well, here's one that I didn't actually say because I was worried about the 40-minute time thing. The average person will spend 81,396 hours at work. So I take that and I say, to build belonging, right, we have to go slower, because 81,000 hours, right? So we have to ask those questions. And MIT said, I will find it in 1 second. I was a little disorganized and I was going to have to read this. Research from MIT finds that our health and happiness at work is not an afterthought, but rather a driving force in our decision to take, to stay at, or to leave a job. Our health and happiness at work is not an afterthought. It's rather a driving force in our decision to take, stay, or leave a job. Let me see what other questions. We are a young nonprofit, just 6 months old. We're still finding clients. How do we develop personalized communications when we're still finding people to help with our services? Great question. Here's what I'll tell you that I did when I was at Mel Trotter. Also, you guys may have picked up on the fact that I don't do things by the book usually. I like to operate from a place of I ask for forgiveness and not permission. Differentiation is key. And this is, I think, true in sales and nonprofit across the board. So it is absolutely not doing it by the book, but rather doing it as tackling the elephant in the room. I would say, here's who we are. I have no idea what I'm doing. Or, you know, I'm paraphrasing for you. I don't mean to put words in your mouth. But I can tell you, when I was at Mel Trotter, I sent a letter to the donors and I said, hey, I know you guys aren't going to care about this CRM that we just ripped out, but you need to care. And here's why. I know it's not sexy. I know it's not exciting. I know it's not impact, but it actually is. And here's why. Here's what you need to know about why I felt compelled to do it. It's going to take me a long time to get this team to sort of jive and to trust one another, but I can rip out a CRM in about a week, at least figure out in the first week why what's been here is not working and why something else can be way better, right? So I go head on with conversation that you might feel like you would only share with the people in your close circle. Those are your people in your close circle. Bring them in.